Flightcast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me here at the beginning of yet another week. Decent amount to talk about with respect to how the schedule goes and, the fact that we had celebrations this past weekend, which just, for me, kind of came out of nowhere. It's like, okay, when is this? What's going on? Just all of a sudden, 9 o'clock at night. Well, there's this announcement, there's that announcement. It's like, okay. I was still just processing the fact that we had watched the first Fantastic Four First Steps trailer. Yeah, that happened like the day before. So I've got all this going. And then I had to went and saw Sinners and did a review for that as well. But, there's a decent amount to talk about here on a Monday. There really is. And for those of you who perhaps want to take a break from other more somber things that have either taken place today or, have this particular date as a significance, here's a bit of an escape for you. But before diving into all the topics hot and heavy for this week, I want to remind everybody listening to this show that you can find it and the rest of my shows at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, the Flightcast YouTube page, Spotify, or Pandora. The shows can all be found there or wherever you get your podcasts. There's this show that comes out on Mondays talking about movies, TV, and other assorted media of the week. And then there's Flight Box, which this week will begin its next month-long journey every week talking about Andor Season 2. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I didn't know about this 3-episode block stuff until a number of you brought it up a few weeks ago. So it's like, okay, watching 3 episodes every Wednesday and then recording a show on it. We're going to have to see how that works for the schedule. But we're going to do it starting this Wednesday. Andor Season 2 on Flightbox. And then, of course, we do the listener feedback show on Friday Flight every Friday now, so get your emails in by 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Friday to be certain that you'll be counted among the week's show. And that's where you talk about the stuff that you want to talk about with respect to movies, TV, and other assorted media, and I respond to it. Also want to take a moment to thank all of the very loyal, faithful supporters of patreon.com/theflightcast. Hope that you've been enjoying the bonus content there. My bonus episodes of Flight Review, another one of which I will be adding a new episode today because of the 9-year anniversary. This is one of the more somber ones. The 9-year anniversary of the death of one of my favorite musical artists, Prince, who I grew up with. Has been a part of my life and my family's life since before I was born, to be honest with you. 9 years ago today is when he died, and because of that, I decided to finally watch the movie Purple Rain. I've never seen it before, and I will be posting a Flight Review episode on that, so stay tuned for that. Patrons, hope that you enjoy that, and hope that you enjoy all the other bonus content that is available at patreon.com/theflightcast. All right, let's get into it. First, let's talk about celebrations because that's top of mind. We're going a little bit out of order in terms of when things happen, but this really did sneak up on me, kind of like the Fantastic Four First Steps trailer did as well. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but all these announcements, right? I've never been to celebrations, and I've watched clips here and there, and I just found out that apparently it happens only every 2 years. It's like every other year, right? And the next one's going to be in LA, and my one buddy Craig, who's like the biggest Star Wars fan that I know, I'm like, okay, Craig, so you're going. And he's like, I really want to go. And it's like, no, you're going, Craig. You've got to go. Like, if you're a diehard Star Wars fan, you got to go. If we lived in Japan, you would have been there this year, and you would have seen the trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu like all the fans did. Although, I will tell you that I did see the trailer for Mandalorian and Grogu that many others saw before it got yanked. Presumably before it got yanked. I don't know if it got yanked or not. I just know that very soon after it was shown, I saw the video of what was there on, cell phone recording, which, I'm certain was not allowed. You go and look for it on the live stream and it's not there. So, yeah, I'm always stuck between a rock and a hard place in this. And I remember Kerry Vandenberg, he was an old, long-time listener. I don't know if he's still listening to the show or not, but I remember we used to disagree about this because, and maybe even a number of you have disagreed with this particular position, or maybe you agree with me, is that I'm really torn on the idea of like clips and trailers that are only for the people that attend these events. Because the reality of the situation is not everybody is privileged enough, not everybody is fortunate enough to attend events like Star Wars Celebration, wherever they're located, whether they're in the continental United States or whether they're overseas, whether they're closer to whatever wherever you call home on planet Earth. Fact of the matter is, not every diehard Star Wars fan can get there, and even if they could, there's not enough room for them. So what do you do for all of the other fans, the countless thousands, millions that are at home that would love to see that footage, but you're basically telling them tough shit, you don't get to see it unless you pony up the money and find the opportunity to be able to show up at Celebration. I have a problem with that. I've never liked that elitism. And yeah, I do consider it a form of elitism. And I know that there are plenty of people that will disagree and say, well, there should be some reward for us going. Yes, I get that. I understand that. And you know what? How about this? Like, if you did a pair of clips, or if you did like a pair of trailers, right, and you had one that was Comic Con specific, but at the same time you released another one for the general public that can't get to that Celebrations or can't get to that Comic Con, right? And maybe it's not the exact same trailer. Maybe there's a couple of things that are in the con only trailer that the people that are at the event can see, and it's like, oh well, you saw this trailer, you were there if you saw this trailer, if you saw that in the trailer, if you saw this or whatever. That's fine. I don't see what the issue with that is. But the idea of blocking out all of your fans that can't make it to Celebrations or that can't make it to an event, and saying, well, you'll see it when we're good and ready. Well, that's bullshit. I've never agreed with that. I really haven't. I feel like there's other unique things. There's like swag opportunities. There are other things that you can do, that you can provide to the people that actually attend the convention, attend the event, that would be better swag, right? That would be better things for them to be like, hey, this was unique. Better rewards for them, finding their way there. Because again, you do have to be fortunate. You do have to be, privileged. It's not just a simple case of work hard and spend money. No, screw that. That's utterly insulting and ridiculous for people to suggest that. No, there's a lot of good fortune that goes into be able to, to attend these events in that regard. So yeah, I've just never really been a fan of people at home being snuffed out, like you're just left out of it in that regard. And that's why I wanted to look at, that camcorder video, or that cell phone video rather. And I mean, look, I don't have a ton of thoughts on it other than to say it looks exactly like the TV show. It looks exactly like The Mandalorian, seasons 1 through 3. So, all right, all of that in movie form, continuing after the third season. Cool, great. Sigourney Weaver playing a role. All right, fantastic. I don't see anything that gives me pause with respect to it. The only thing that I guess is iffy is, will they stick to the May 22nd, 2026 release date? Well, you would think so. You would hope so. I mean, we've at least gotten to this point where, like, okay, we have a trailer, we have clips. There are things that have actually been filmed for this that are being put together for promotional material for the fans. So, okay, this is already ahead of any other Star Wars cinematic project that has been teased for us. And look, I want to make it clear that I'm not, somebody that is bitter or, just impatient about when are we going to get another Star Wars movie. I'm not, because quite frankly, I've enjoyed all the television, right? I still need to watch Skeleton Crew, but aside from that, I've enjoyed all of the shows. I've enjoyed Andor, I've enjoyed The Mandalorian, I have enjoyed Ahsoka, I've enjoyed Obi-Wan Kenobi, I've enjoyed The Book of Boba Fett and The Acolyte. I've enjoyed all of these shows, right? I don't have anything negative to say about Star Wars on Disney Plus. I live on that island of there is no bad Star Wars. I do. I live on that island. And yeah, I know that I missed a couple of shows in there, and those are shows that I haven't watched yet, but along with Skeleton Crew. But either way, I live on the island of there's no bad Star Wars. I find things to enjoy out of all of them, and I will find something to enjoy out of The Mandalorian and Grogu. I know that. Absolutely know that. I am not even remotely worried about that. But yeah, the trailer, the clip itself, for anybody that saw it, it just looks like the show in film form, in movie form. Great. Fantastic. I have no issues with respect to that. And to tell you the truth, I have no issues with the rest of these announcements. All right, so Sean Levy's going to pop up and do a Starfighter movie with Ryan Gosling, and that was like the big, huge reveal on day one. Oh, all right. I mean, director of Deadpool and Wolverine, among other things, is going to try his hand at, another Ryan, right? He's did that work with Ryan Reynolds. Now he's working with Ryan Gosling, and he's going to join the Star Wars universe. It thumbs up, seriously. I mean, here's the thing. Like, with respect to, like, massive hype for these projects, I don't necessarily have that, but that doesn't mean that I'm not looking forward to it. Like, Star Wars, to me, I think, is turning into a pretty steady franchise. Now, again, I've talked before about the idea of, all right, these films, cinematically, they need to be epic, and in the past, I think that one of the problems that they were running into, especially in the sequel trilogy era, was they were trying to do too much on the big screen, right? And these movies need to be event films, right? These need to be big deals, big marketing pushes, and lots of hype and lots of pomp and circumstance from a nerd standpoint in that regard, right? Episodes 1 through 6 were big event pieces, right? Because we didn't get them but one every 3 years. Like you get episode 4 in 77, 3 years later Empire, 4 years after that Return of the Jedi, right? That's your plan. That's your basically your blueprint release date wise with respect to the original trilogy. Then you get to the prequels. Phantom Menace in 1999, 3 years later, Attack of the Clones, 3 years later, Revenge of the Sith. Now, look, am I saying that Star Wars movies need to be 3 years in between? No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that maybe not one every year. Seriously, we don't need a new Star Wars movie every year, and I'm sure plenty of you that are starved for Star Wars cinematic content are probably flipping me off right now. Well, you know what? It's all subjective. You can feel however you want to, but that's the one thing that I didn't necessarily care for with respect to the Disney era, and it's not the quality of the movies. The subjective quality of the movies is perfectly fine for me. I've enjoyed all 5 of the Disney era Star Wars films. That's the entirety of the sequel trilogy plus Rogue One plus Solo. Enjoyed all 5 of those films to different degrees in that regard, right? But the idea that, one after the other, right? Force Awakens 2015, Rogue One 2016, Last Jedi 2017, Solo 2018, The Rise of Skywalker 2019. Yeah, that's a lot. That is. Like 5 movies in 5 years is a lot. You're not the MCU. And Star Wars shouldn't be like the MCU in that regard, at least not cinematically. Now, television, Disney Plus shows, have at it. I mean that, have at it, because it's a different mindset. It's a different situation here. So when they talk about, all right, season 2 of Ahsoka happening, when they talk about an animated Darth Maul series, it's like, well, first of all, has Star Wars struck out on animation? Have they? Have they at all? Now, I know that there's like the Tales of the Jedi and Tales from the Dark Side or whatever it was called that I haven't seen yet, right? Those I have not seen, but I'm talking about the series, right? Clone Wars, home run. Rebels, home run. Bad Batch, home run. As far as that style of animation is concerned, they're batting 1,000. 3 for 3 as far as I'm concerned, subjectively speaking. So I have zero worries about Maul Shadow Lord. None whatsoever. And quite honestly, as soon as the project was announced, like when I heard about it on Threads, my first thought was, oh, animation. Before even knowing what it was, animation or live action, I'm like, oh, the animation. That's got to be an animated show. And sure enough, it is. Sam Witwer reprising the voice, of course, because that's where the lore of Darth Maul has really been fleshed out in terms of canon, more in the animated form than in the live action form. And I'm perfectly okay with that. I know that we had that one brief moment where we saw him talk to Kira in Solo, right? Part of the whole Crimson Dawn situation. I get that, but the majority of it has been his presence in Clone Wars, his presence in Rebels, his presence in the animated form. So it's like, all right, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and continue on with respect to his legacy and building that out and fleshing that out. And I have no issues with that. We've done enough. They've done enough, like, foundation laying with respect to the principles of his character and the expansion of his character in animated form. Continuing it in animated form, I have no issues with that whatsoever. But back to my original point, television is different with respect to expansion in the Star Wars universe than cinema is. Television is, it's not a big, huge event spectacle. I know they're trying to do that with Andor now. I know they are, because it's this whole thing where it's 12 episodes and it's 3 episodes every week, and boiling down to that big finale that's gonna, hopefully lead right into Rogue One, as they told us it was going to a couple of years ago. I understand that they're trying to make that event television, but event streaming television is very different than event theatrical presentation. Event theatrical presentation requires you to leave your home, buy a ticket, drive to a movie theater, sit in a movie theater, and watch 2 to 2.5 hours of pure unadulterated joy, right? That's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's being billed as in some form to you, right? So presentation is everything. And that's why I think that, when it comes to Lucasfilm and their approach to Star Wars movies, scale that back. And they most certainly have. They have not made a Star Wars feature film in going on 6 years at this point. They've taken a large enough break. And, it's not that they've done nothing, because clearly they fleshed out the television universe, the seasons of Mandalorian, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett, which I enjoyed, whatever. The Acolyte, which I also enjoyed, again, whatever, in fact, double whatever to people who disagree with that. Uh, Andor, of course, which I do consider to be the best of the Star Wars Disney Plus shows, but I don't need all of the Star Wars shows to be exactly like it, right? So they've done quite a bit fleshing out the universe on television. But yeah, the event films, eventually the franchise is going to have to go back to theatrical presentation. It's going to have to go back to cinema, and those should be event films. Those should be big deals every other year or every couple of years or so. Again, I'm not saying they have to be every 3 years. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there should be some type of a distance. Not every year, okay? Not every year. We do not need a new Star Wars film every year. That is my personal subjective opinion. Perhaps you disagree. If you do, I'd love to have a discussion about that on Friday Flight. I would love to know from any of you that think that we should have an MCU pace. Now, I realize that saying that is a little bit of a misnomer because the MCU's pace is not one movie a year either. It's like 2, 3 movies a year, right? And they're still doing that so far. They haven't really showed any signs of necessarily slowing that down, save 1 year last year when they only came out with Deadpool and Wolverine. But they're right back to 3 movies this year. We're waiting on them. We had Brave New World. We're waiting on Thunderbolts. And then after that, we got Fantastic Four First Steps. So that is still more of an accelerated pace for the MCU. Okay, fine. Star Wars is not that. But 1 movie a year, I think, is still too much for this franchise. If Marvel did 1 movie a year, I think that would be fine. I think that'd be enough of a scale back for them. They're never going to do that. But that would be enough of a scale back for them. But Star Wars has never needed to, increase, cinematically speaking. And I hope Disney Plus affords them the ability to expand the universe as far as their reaches will allow them of storytelling with respect to Disney Plus and the television stuff, and then they can leave the big, huge event stuff for cinema, right? And do that every couple of years and have that be this big, hugely hyped spectacle that people have got to buy tickets and go to the theater to go see, right? That's my personal subjective opinion with respect to these Star Wars projects. And I don't have any issues again with anything that they announced at Celebration. Again, I haven't. There's some of the animated stuff like Visions and Tales from the Jedi, and also it was Tales from the Empire, not Dark Side. I think I said that erroneously earlier, but there's a lot of other stuff that I have not seen, like animated wise, and there is one live action TV show I have not watched leading up to Andor, but by and large, I really haven't had any issues with any of the content they put out. And one of the things that I really do like about it, and I'll talk about this for a second with respect to Celebrations, is I like the resurgence and the appreciation, the renewed, the revival, if you will, of actors like Hayden Christensen and Ahmed Best, and me personally, Genevieve O'Reilly. Genevieve O'Reilly is still the one out of the three that I feel like the greatest for, because that was someone that had her role completely erased from Revenge of the Sith. She was in deleted scenes about the petition of the 2000 and the early formations of the Rebel Alliance, and they wound up on the cutting room floor, and that was it. They weren't going to do anything with her iteration of Mon Mothma like ever again, and then they brought her back for Rogue One. And from that point, after giving her, the reins to the character officially in canon for that movie, they said, all right, bring her back for Andor. And she's been aces. She's been phenomenal. I love that she has, had this resurgence and that she's become a very critical part of the franchise, and that her Mon Mothma character has been fleshed out, even more so than the glimpse that we got of her in the minute or two that she was in Return of the Jedi. So I like that depth for her. But I also love Hayden Christensen's return and just the triumphant return that he has had. Him and Ahmed Best. And I saw that Ahmed Best, had some thoughts with respect to the toxic fandom in Star Wars. And to hear him speak on like Star Wars fandom in general and just the idea of like the power that fans hold with respect to how more of the content gets made in that regard. But he speaks from a place of like anybody that saw the clip, anybody that watched it, they let him go on for a good 4 or 5 minutes, but he had a lot to say, and just the humility of that guy, and just the class that he demonstrates, and I was definitely one of those back in the prequel era that I didn't necessarily blame him, but I was one that was highly critical of the Jar Jar Binks character, and I think that there were some criticisms of it back then that you know, with respect to the construction of the character, stuff that maybe probably falls a bit more, a lot more actually, on George Lucas than it does on Ahmed Best. But it wasn't like Ahmed Best deserved the hate that he got. No one deserves that level of hatred for something like that, just for doing their job, just for trying to be a character within this treasure trove of characters in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And just to hear him speak with the dignity and the respect and the care and the grace with respect to the passion that he has, the passion that everybody else has, that makes these movies, and how he talked about how he came from humble beginnings and he couldn't afford the toys or the sheets, and his mom would literally get the Star Wars fabric and make the pajamas or the sheets or whatever for him, right? Like hand me down, like handmade Star Wars stuff, because he couldn't buy the store Star Wars stuff. I mean, that's fan. That's absolutely fan, and it's. I'm glad he said stuff like that, because when I think of him and when I think of Hayden, Hayden consistently getting standing ovations and just the resurgence, the fact that he's going to be in Ahsoka season 2, which we figured. Anybody that paid attention to Ahsoka season 1 and saw the end of it, yes, you figured Hayden was going to return, and he that was such a dynamite moment for him, right? I mean, he was an Obi-Wan, of course, but and had that great moment that I loved, but also what he did in Ahsoka was fantastic. But to have these guys come back and really be given their flowers by all the kids that grew up with the prequel generation, all the kids that grew up with the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, for them to be adults and revere him now, revere the both of them now. And yeah, I know the Clone Wars cartoon also helped, cement and establish, the legacy of their characters, Anakin Skywalker and Jar Jar Binks as well. But just all of this reminds me of just how absolutely stupid and ridiculous the whole real fan conversation is. And let's be clear, in any fandom, if anybody talks about who the real fans are, you're full of shit. You're 1000% full of shit. Whatever you're about to say is completely full of shit. Because real fans are fans who are fans of the thing that you're a fan of. Period. There is no gatekeeping here. At least, there should be no gatekeeping allowed. And this happens in all fandoms. We know this. It happens in Marvel. It happens in DC. It happens in Star Trek. Oh, does it ever happen in Star Trek? Those people absolutely grind my flippin' gears. But it also happens in Star Wars. You get these groups of people that go, no, this is the best trilogy. No, that's the best trilogy. No, this is the best era. No, that's the best era, right? And what did Dave Filoni say as well? Let's get him into the mix. What was his quote? Remember Dave Filoni? Hey, Nerd MAGA, right? All of you, the Kathleen Kennedy is going to be fired any day, people. All of you trolls, all of you nerd-rotic data racer, all of you morons. Hey, you hear what your savior, Dave Filoni, hear what your white male savior, Dave Filoni, said? What did he say about Star Wars? Quote, I don't get into this debate of what's better than what. I don't care. I like it all. End quote. That's your boy, Nerd MAGA. That's your boy, all of you Kathleen Kennedy haters. That's your boy, right? The man who's going to make Star Wars great again for you. Even he thinks you're full of shit. Even he disagrees with your gatekeeping ways, right? And none of this is Dave Filoni's fault. He's just doing his job. But he is the ultimate Star Wars fan. He's one of the ultimate Star Wars fans. And he understands that all of it is valid. All of it is part of the franchise. All of it is good. And he's not just saying that because he's in charge. He's not just saying that because he's helping make content with Kathleen Kennedy. He's saying that because he's a fan of Star Wars. That's all you have to be. It does not matter which... I mean, all the fighting that Star Wars fans do, and I'm getting to a bit of a rant here because I get passionate about this shit, but all of the fighting that these Star Wars fans waste their time and energy on, when literally you have not one, not two, but 3 trilogies to pick from. What is wrong with you? Do you have any idea how many other fandoms, how many other franchises would kill for that type of content? In terms of how it's generationally structured, I mean, think about this for a second here, okay? You've got the original trilogy, 1977 to 1983. That trilogy specifically hits home for Gen X and elder millennials like myself, right? Elder millennials, in the first 3 years of millennials, right? Like Gen X and elder millennials, that's our trilogy. That's what we grew up with. And really millennials in general, because What's that gap in between Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace? 16 years, right? So for the longest time, millennials, all we had was the original trilogy. And then comes the prequel trilogy from 1999 to 2005. That's Gen Z. Gen Z's formative years was they were growing up as they were watching Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman, Ahmed Best, everybody else involved, right? Like that's their trilogy, right? That's their entry point into the fandom. That's what they grew up with. That's what they latch onto. That is what is part of their soul. And yes, Clone Wars absolutely added to that for their generation. And then you get to the sequel trilogy, 2015 to 2019. That's Gen Alpha, guys. And when Gen Alpha grows even further up and becomes full ass adults, okay, that's going to be their entry point. And they're going to be singing the praises of Rey, Finn, and Poe all the live long day, and throw some Rose Tico in there for good measure. That's right. Star Wars is arguably the most generational franchise on Earth. Pick a trilogy based on what generation you are and when and where you grew up, and that is your trilogy. And guess what? You can latch on to that, and that can be your entry point into the franchise, and you can leave everybody else the hell alone for their entry point. If you are a fan of the original trilogy and you say, damn everything else, that's your business. Keep it in your flippin' head. Leave the prequel and sequel trilogy lovers alone. Prequel trilogy lovers, that's your favorite one? Cool. Leave the OGs and the sequel trilogy people alone. And young Gen Alpha, when they come for the sequel trilogy and you blast them back to the Stone Age, just like the prequel trilogy fans blasted the OG trilogy fans back to the Stone Age on social media, when all of you massively ratio some dipshit that decides to talk mess about Rose Tico or the Disney era of Star Wars, and you talk about how you grew up with it, you had the toys, you love this, you love that, and they need to shut their mouths, just remember, it's all cyclical. They went through the same shit that you're going through when you get to that point. And I've already started to see it, right? It's been 10 years since The Force Awakens, right? You know, it's only been 6 years since Rise of Skywalker, right? Since the sequel trilogy ended. So we've got a little bit more time for Gen Alpha to grow up and really, you know, bare their fangs and grow the spines and get on social media and really start defending this franchise like the others will. And I don't get it. I've had so many people tell me over the years, that's not going to happen. It's different now. No, flip, it's not. If it was that different, then it wouldn't have happened for the previous two. And don't give me this social media nonsense. It's a generational franchise. There are fans for each of these wings. The idea that we would fight over any of them, the idea that we would even remotely hold one trilogy up and say, this is the real Star Wars, all the rest of it is invalid dog shit. The idea that we would waste our time and energy on this nonsense when we have this much of a generational franchise at our beck and call is one of the most asinine things about humanity that could possibly exist. And we live in a time that might be the most asinine in human history. Add that shit to it. It makes no flippin' sense. Ridiculous. So I am so happy that Ahmed Best and Hayden Christensen are getting their flowers at some point down the road. That'll be Daisy Ridley. That'll be John Boyega. That'll be Kelly Marie Tran. It'll happen. Oh, it'll happen. I'm calling it now. I don't give it. You want to be the asshole that wants to disagree with me on that? That's your business. Okay? It's all subjective. You can feel however way you want. But if you really want to be a dick about it and tell me that that's not going to happen, go right ahead. I dare you. I double dog dare you. Because it's most certainly going to happen. And things like Celebration prove that. If this continues on, as we all hope it continues on, right? Do any of us want to see the end of the franchise? No, none of us wants to see the end of the franchise, do we? If you do, then you're even more pathetic and ridiculous than I thought. But if you're like the rest of us rational individuals and you don't want to see the franchise end, then at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to get to a Star Wars Celebration where the ones being cheered heavily by a crowd of thousands in Japan or LA or wherever are the ones from the sequel trilogy, or maybe even the cast of The Acolyte. Oh, wait, how about that? Manny Jacinto getting massively cheered. What were they chanting? Season 2, Season 2, because there are fans who enjoyed that damn show for what it was. There's always fans who enjoy every corner of this franchise for what it is, and it's about to celebrate its 50th flippin' anniversary in 2 years, and you're busy infighting over which trilogy is better. Get the hell out of here. Doesn't make any sense. along with all the other bullshit that doesn't make any sense in the world today. Ah, all right. Rant disengaged. Celebrations was awesome. I love all the stuff that's coming out. I am looking forward to it, and now I just gotta brace myself for season 2 of Andor coming out on Wednesday, and the 3 episodes I gotta watch for Flightbox for that. All right, cool. Moving on. All right, let's wind the clock back a bit, like the day before Celebration started, and talk about this Fantastic Four First Steps trailer, because that just popped out of nowhere. I was at work, and all of a sudden I get the notification on my phone, and I'm like, oh, well, shit, okay. Didn't realize I was going to be watching this on my mobile device, but I am not waiting to go home to watch this on a bigger screen, so I'm going to watch it now. I dig it. I mean, seriously, one of the interesting things that I heard somebody say about this is that they liked how standalone that it felt, because it seemed like it was not part of a just setting up another movie to set up something else. And it's like, well, yeah, because it's not in the same universe. Like the way that the Fantastic Four is starting out in the MCU is they're in a separate universe. So the idea is that where they're at currently, when we see them in this movie, they're it. There are no Avengers, there are no X-Men, there's nobody else. This is just them. But the biggest thing that I like about the trailer, truthfully, and about the vibe of this movie is the retro future stuff. I do like the retro future look, and like all the old grainy like 50s footage, like and the whole like they're being interviewed by what's his name? That's Mark Gatiss, by the way, right? Isn't he one of the guys? That's Mark Gatiss, right? That who was he was Mycroft in Sherlock, and he's been involved in Doctor Who and a bunch of other BBC stuff, right? Like he's the one like that was hosting the show where they were doing a feature on them, right? But no, the whole retro futuristic feel of this, like the old future, right? When you look at like the old like World's Fairs, and this is what the technology of the future is going to look like, and that's what they commonly call it, the old future. It's like, well, what if the old future actually happened and wasn't updated like it is today, right? Like it's an interesting concept, and I like what they're doing with this, because I mean, truthfully, with the designs that they've gone from the, and I haven't read a ton of Fantastic Four. In fact, the only Fantastic Four I've ever read were the tie-in novels for Civil War, and that look was obviously different than what this is. This is a classic future. That's a good way of putting it. Everybody uses retro a lot. This is a classic future look. I know Phil is like really stoked for this. Right, he has said on more than one occasion, Phil Barker, that this is the comic book movie he is most looking forward to, and I understand why. I completely get why, especially from the fans of the Fantastic Four who have been waiting for probably this particular type of Fantastic Four adaptation. And I don't mean any disrespect to the Tim Story movies or to the Fan Four Stick film. I really don't, because those movies are a product of the genre as a whole. And when they were made with specific ideas in mind, and none of them were to be part of a giant shared cinematic universe under the Marvel banner. That was not what any of those films were made under that guise in that regard. And so, do you want to go retro with it? Well, no. I think the closest you're going to see as far as them going retro is when you saw Chris Evans be Human Torch in Deadpool and Wolverine. Maybe Jessica Alba might make a fun multiversal appearance, not in this film, but somewhere else. Maybe that will happen, but I think that's as far as you're going to get, truthfully. But I know that there's a lot of anticipation for this particular Fantastic Four film, because many fans are saying, well, we're finally waiting for a good one. But I will say this. I saw somebody that posted on, on Threads talking about how, don't gaslight people and act like anybody liked the previous three. Okay, that's a bullshit statement from the beginning. Somebody liked the first three. Somebody did. A few years back over at Squadcast Media, we actually did a review of the first one. We reassessed it, if you will, rewatched it, and discovered that, hey, guess what? It really doesn't suck. It's really not that bad. It really has its high points. It has some parts in it that does not age well, particularly with respect to how Jessica Alba's Invisible Woman was treated. But, sadly, that was acceptable in the cinema of the times, right? Certainly not acceptable now, and I'm absolutely certain that Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm will be treated very differently in terms of her abilities and how she will be portrayed. I mean, I can already tell that in the trailer, truthfully, that she's going to be a very different mother figure, and I mean literally a mother figure. And, Jared brought this up also in the last Friday Flight in terms of the Sue Storm mother angle. I think Jared was the one that brought it up. Apologies if I misspoke on that one, but usually Jared is the one that him and Stu have been dropping the comic bombs lately. Phil and Anthony they're also avid comic readers in that regard, as far as like bringing up issues and making like recommendations and whatnot. But either way, yeah, this looks like a very different, very family oriented Fantastic Four film. And I like it. I dig the vibe. I'm going to enjoy the movie. I know I'm going to enjoy the movie. The question is, how much am I going to enjoy the movie, and do I think it will be the best of the Fantastic Four films? I do. I am not going into it necessarily with that high of an expectation, like be better than. No, remember, I go into movies saying, prove to me that you're bad. So I'm already interested and I'm already thinking that I'm going to enjoy it. It's just a question of how much will I enjoy it. Will I enjoy it more than the other three? Probably, if I had to venture a guess. I'm in a different place with this one than I am with Superman, obviously. And yeah, that is because my DC bias that I most certainly have. Remember, bias is not a bad word. I feel stronger about the Superman franchise and about those films. I feel more strongly about Man of Steel being the best Superman film I've ever seen than I have about any of the previous three Fantastic Four films being the best of those I've ever seen. So my expectations or my thought level, my belief process going into this is a little different in that regard, right? Because with Superman, I like have a gauge where it's like, okay, Man of Steel is my favorite. Will I like Superman more, less, or equal to Man of Steel, right? I'm not necessarily looking at that for Fantastic Four. If I'm being fair, if I'm being fair about it with Fantastic Four, I'm basically saying how much more am I going to like this than the other three? Because I don't think of the other three I don't put them as nearly as high regard as I do Man of Steel. And we all do this. We all have these hierarchies, and it's okay to have hierarchies. It's all right to admit that you like one version of an interpretation better than another. Just don't be a dick about it, right? I'm not sitting here going, the Tim Story Fantastic movies are garbage, and Marvel Studios is going to blow it out of the water now they finally own Fox. I'm not saying that stupid shit. There are plenty of idiots out there that are saying that stupid shit. Same people that are saying that James Gunn's Superman is going to blow Man of Steel out of the water. Same shit, different coin. Or rather, different sides of the same shit-stained coin in that regard. No, I have no time for that ridiculousness. I'm going to enjoy Fantastic Four. It's just a question of how much I'm going to enjoy Fantastic Four First Steps as opposed to the other ones. But I do want to address one other thing with respect to this. And I'm going to call upon my Googling powers. And I'm going to look up a name. Because as many of you longtime listeners know, I am not a comics expert. I am very much a novice. There are a lot of classic runs of both Marvel and DC I've never read. I literally just told you minutes ago that the bulk of my Fantastic Four comic reading is all contained within the 97 issues and tie-ins of Civil War. That's it. It's all the Fantastic Four I've ever read in life. There's plenty more. This means I've never read any of the classic interpretations whatsoever. So there is a character that I am told is the Silver Surfer in this film, but it's not the Norrin Rad Silver Surfer. It's someone named Shalabal, and according to Wikipedia, Shalabal is a fictional character appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics, the immortal empress of Zenn-La and the lover of Norrin Rad, the Silver Surfer. When he becomes the Herald of Galactus in exchange for his planet being spared, the lovers are separated from eternity. It says the character first appeared in Silver Surfer #1, August 1968, created by writer Stan Lee and artist John Buscema. Okay, so she's Norrin Rad's love interest, according to this, as far as the classic form is concerned. But apparently there are other versions. The Earth X version is an alternate universe variant. Oh, there's a word we've heard a lot lately in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, variant. Apparently an alternate universe variant of Shalabal appears in Earth X, and this version was transformed into the Silver Surfer by Franklin Richards / Galactus before she is later killed in battle against the Celestials. Following his own death, the original Silver Surfer reunites with Shalabal in the afterlife. That's everything straight from the wiki, like in a quick Google search about Shalabal. Now, why did I read all of that? You know why I read all of that. Because of the... We're doing this again. Here we go again with the gender swapping, race swapping, whatever swapping argument. Here we go again. Okay, all right. Listen, Nerd MAGA and all of the gatekeepers and all of the misogynistic twits out there. Yes, Their panties have been in a bunch from the beginning because Julia Garner was cast as Shalabal, the female Silver Surfer, and now they've seen her in person. And naturally, what are they going to do? They're going to complain about how she looks. Oh, how is it that Silver Surfer from Rise of the Silver Surfer looks better than this nonsense? Because you're an asshole and a misogynist and an absolute twit and a blight on the MCU fan base. That's why. That's precisely why. Get out. Go sit in a corner. Go cry harder that they're going with a female Silver Surfer. I tell you, you would think, from a rational standpoint, after 17 plus years of establishing its own Earth, okay, we know what Earth the MCU is. Isn't it officially 616 now? Isn't that what the MCU Earth is considered? Didn't we establish that in Multiverse of Madness? Help me out here, MCU fans. It doesn't matter what the designation is necessarily. All we know is it's its own Earth, and it has been building its own continuity and its own alternate history that is not like the comics. Because for one more time, if you want 100% comic accuracy, then read the comics. Because no cinematic interpretation of a comic book character or a comic book storyline is 100% accurate. That includes 300 and or Sin City. I know they're really close. They're really, really close. But guess what they're not? They're not comics. They are motion pictures. And no, I'm not inviting an argument for you to prove me wrong about 300 or Sin City in terms of being 100% accurate, because that's not my flippin' point. If we stay on target, we're too close. Stay on target. My point is that once again, the gatekeepers and the irrational nerd MAGA twits are all up in arms over, oh my goodness, here the MCU strikes again. Whatever are we going to do with a female Silver Surfer? We're going to watch her be badass. That's what we're going to do. We're going to watch Julia Garner absolutely be badass in the role because it looks cool and it's probably going to be cool as far as I'm concerned. And I am rooting for it 100%. You know why? Because I like being a happy, non-egotistical, equal opportunity human being. That's what I like being, okay? So miss me with all the nonsense about Shalabal. It's not a gender bend. They didn't change Norrin Rad. She's not a female Norrin Rad, okay? And even if she was, boo flippin' who, if that's what they decide to do in this version of a Marvel Earth, right? They're allowed to do whatever they wish to do with respect to the characters, and if you think it is so much of a bastardization, then it is your prerogative to not watch it. But we know you will. We know that just about at least half, and I only say, I'm being generous when I say at least half, because it's probably more. But we know that so many of these whiners and complainers, whenever something like this changes in live action, are going to hate watch the damn thing in the first place because they need something to complain about. They need to be specific with their complaints because they only know and enjoy misery, and misery loves company. That's all that they live for, the pathetic little twits. So yeah, that's really the gist of what I have to say about it. And I don't think anybody should be surprised with that particular opinion with respect to that. I think it does look awesome. I think the movie itself looks awesome. And yeah, the whole Galactus thing, I know a number of you are like, I'm hoping that Galactus stays unrevealed fully until we get to the movie. Yeah, I mean, great hope. I mean, it won't surprise me if somebody in that marketing department is like, well, the general audience needs to see what he looks like. And you may get a Doomsday style reveal like in BVS, perhaps. Although we never got teases of Doomsday in previous marketing like we are currently here with Galactus, right? We don't see all of them. We just see bits and pieces, if you will. But either way, no, First Steps looks like a damn good time. Looks like I'm going to enjoy it. And July is going to be a hell of a month. It seriously is. It's going to be, what is it? Super Fantastic is what they were calling it. And there's a number of accounts. And I am pleased that either I'm training the algorithm properly on Threads, or there are legitimately that many people that are like, hey, listen, can we not fight about who's going to be, like, have the better movie in July? Can we just enjoy both Superman and Fantastic Four First Steps and call it good? Because, yeah, I'm all for that. Because so many of us are going to be in that Venn diagram of overlap and we're going to see both movies. Don't act like you're not. Many of you, damn near everybody that listens to this show and is interested in either Marvel or DC is seeing both movies. Don't act like you're not. You are, even if you have to scrounge up the money, scrape it up, whatever. You're going to watch Superman on July 11th if you can, and you're going to watch Fantastic Four First Steps on July 25th if you can. You're going to. Yes, you are going to. Don't say you're not. Yes, you are. It's perfectly fine. It's okay. Just don't be a tribalist dick about it. That's all. It's not that difficult to say, I'm going to watch both, but I'm more excited for Superman. Or I'm going to watch both, but I'm more excited for Fantastic Four, and to just leave it at that. It's okay to do that. You don't need to say, well, Superman is going to destroy Fantastic Four, or First Steps is going to annihilate DC and throw it back to the Stone Age. You don't need to say that shit. It's not necessary. That's where you go too far. And it's amazing how people just can't cross those lines because there's so many morons out there that think that that snarky shit is just sharing their opinion. No, it's you being an asshole. And you can share your opinion without being an asshole. Your opinion does not have to be assholish. It just doesn't. And how do we know that it's assholish? Well, if you're pitting one against the other and you're saying one is going to crush the other, which I am not saying, I don't know how either of these movies are going to do financially. I really don't. Based on the prior history of both Marvel Studios and the fledgling history of DC Studios, I have absolutely no clue. Because Fantastic Four First Steps is not a big team up with prior characters like we got in No Way Home or in Deadpool and Wolverine. It's not the continuation of prior movies like Guardians Volume 3 or Multiverse of Madness or Wakanda Forever all were, right? It's a totally brand new, separated deal. How much is that going to captivate the general audience? I don't know. Just like I don't know how much a new Superman film is going to captivate the general audience either. One that is a number of years removed from the previous incarnation of Superman that we had on the big screen. But either way, I know this. I'm probably going to have a damn good July because I like being happy and I like the idea of it's okay to like them all. I'm a fan of Marvel and I'm a fan of DC. I do not place qualifiers on either. If you're a fan of either side or if you're a fan of both, great. Let's all have fun watching the movies in July. Why the hell not? Can we have some fun in this world? You know, the world is shitty and argumentative enough as it is. Can we just have some fun with our comic book movies? Is that possible? Can we do that as rational people? Can we? I think we can. I hope we can. Because seriously, that's how I want to spend my July. Happy as hell that we got another Superman interpretation, finally a third one in 47 years. And happy as hell that we're probably going to have a Fantastic Four movie that will more than likely be the best Fantastic Four movie made to date. More than likely. There's nothing for me to be upset about in July. Nothing. Nothing for me to be snarky about in July. I'm getting two likely awesome movies. Here's hoping. Come on now. Seriously. I feel like I've been a little bit extra ranty today, but maybe that's a good thing because I'm just tired of the tribalism. You know I am. And I'm just ready to be positive about this shit. I'm ready to be excited again about all of our favorite fandoms bringing us new shit to the forefront. Seriously. Come on now. Join me on that. I think that's going to do it for this particular episode of Flightcast. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Thank you so much for supporting the Flightcast. I know you've got thoughts about Celebration. I know you've got thoughts about the new projects. I know you've got thoughts about Star Wars fans. And I certainly know that you've got thoughts about Fantastic Four First Steps. A number of you already talked about it in the previous Friday Flight episode. If you want to talk about it more or anything else related to movies, TV, and other assorted media, you know where to find me on Threads and Instagram at The Flightcast, on BLUESKY at Just Flightcast. There's also the Flightcast Facebook page. There is the YouTube comment section underneath the post for this particular episode itself on the Flightcast YouTube page. And of course, I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right. Take care. Stay safe out there. Have a great week, and I will see you all next time. Don't forget Andor Season 2 Flightbox episode this Wednesday night. All right. Take it easy.